Hello, everyone. Hey, thank you for attending today's webinar on collecting data in harsh environments. But yeah, let's just jump into things. My name is Tom Frankham. I'm the Business Development Manager here at Juniper Systems for rugged computing. Been with the company for, going on 6 years now, and loved every minute of it.
I'm Brent Hume. I am a sales account manager, and I specialize in industrial sales. I have been with Juniper Systems for 4 years and enjoy doing this work and getting into this harsh environment data collection. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. And what we want to do is run through a couple of the different scenarios that we are aware of and that we hear about often, and just give you some tips and best practices to help you work with your Juniper device in these conditions. So we're going to go over touch screen profiles. This is something that all of our devices have that are very beneficial. Then we're going to talk about temperature scenarios, wet conditions, dust and dirt, drop and vibration, and then hazardous locations. And then afterwards, we're going to talk about some of the questions that you may have. So we're going to dive right in.
Yeah, so the company, Juniper Systems, as many of you know, we've been around for a little while. We've been in business for 28, going on 29 years now. We're made, manufactured, designed, developed. Everything is done right here in our Logan, Utah facility. And we definitely pride ourselves in quality products that are built to kind of keep up with your harsh environments and your work. That's at the end of the day, we want to make sure you're able to get your job done. So that's why we do pay special attention to that, and why we really do build everything here. We like that's what we pride ourselves in.
I think it's worth pointing out that we realize that working with Juniper Systems, do you expect a device that's going to work in these harsh conditions? So we're going to talk about a couple of things. We have touch profiles, and each of our devices has this available on it. And what you'll find is on the main screen, which is shown here, that you'll see where there's a blue icon that says touch profiles, and it'll bring up this little screen. And then talk about the 5 touch profiles on here, and just left to right, top to bottom. So that first one, which is blue, that's the default, and that will recognize finger or the hard tip stylus. It'll work with either one. The next one is finger only, so it is engineered a little bit differently. The software is engineered to react a little bit differently there. On the bottom row, stylus only. I will point out that if you get this stylus only is really handy if you have small things that need to be checked or looked at. What is difficult is if you select the stylus, it will not recognize your finger or glove or anything. So know that that's there. You better have a stylus handy. That makes it better. That middle lower row is wet profile, and this is one that we're going to talk about a little bit more here in a bit. But this is very important, because what we've done is we've designed this so it will ignore the water droplets hitting and go toward the finger or the soft tip stylus better. And then the last one is the glove profile, and that is for the people that are in cooler conditions or have a work environment where they need to wear gloves, and it will be sensitive to this and work with that. Show you real quick. This is how it works to set this up on the Windows device. So he double clicks on the icon there on the desktop, and then here he'll change it to the wet profile, and not a lot is going on. But it will take a minute, and this will update, and as that turns off, there's a little status bar that you will see. And then now he's changing it back to the standard default profile.
Yeah, it's slightly different with Android. So there's 2 different ways. So the one is you swipe down from the top, you swipe down again to get your toolbar, and it's on that second page. You'll click the touch controller there, pulls up the same options, the finger, wet, stylus, all the profiles that we've set on there. So it'll do the same thing, it'll just let you know that it's changing. The second way to do it is you swipe up from the bottom, go to the settings icon, and it's the 3rd one down there. You'll see the touch controller, and then you can access it that way. So just 1 of 2 ways. Android has 2 different ways to get to it, just whichever you prefer, whichever works best.
I did select the stylus there. You know that you have to use that stylus to get to it.
Yeah. And here's just a little page. This is, like, so you can see a little bit better on the Android one. Touch controller is that third icon down, and then it does pull up the finger, stylus finger, glove, stylus, and that. So gives you the same descriptions, and it will change and give you a little update when it's changed.
So heat and direct sun, this is a situation that's come up with us. Obviously this summer, it's been an abnormally warm summer in parts of the country and parts of the world that we work with. And there's a couple of things that we want to point out here about working in the hot environments. First of all, the operating temperature of the device goes from a -4 to a positive 120 Fahrenheit or -20 to 50 Celsius. This is operating temperature. This is different than outside ambient temperature in that when the device is left in direct sunlight, it, like your car could, will heat up to even hotter temperatures just from the solar load that the device will take in. So I talked with a customer yesterday who they actually had a thermometer that they put on the edge of the screen, and the screen got up to 140, albeit the operating temperature was still under, but he immediately got the device into some shade. But know that that operating temperature and ambient temperature don't always line up, and that it will take on more heat, even if it's 95 degrees and you know it's hot. But it's possible that if this is in direct sunlight, that's going to go up. The storage temperature, I just want to point out that that is just for storage, meaning that if you leave this in your truck while you're on a site, it's not going to melt, but it's probably not the best for it. So just know that there is a limit there as well. Some of the best practices in heat. One, on the touch profile that we talked about before, the finger and the stylus are probably your best bet, and that would work with either the fine tip or the soft tip stylus. A fully charged battery, and this will come up a little bit in a minute, but the fully charged battery, the whole thing seemed to work a little bit better if you're starting off with plenty of battery there. Don't leave the device in a truck. It's going to get the internal heat and the operating temperature a lot hotter quicker when it's in that excessive heat. When possible, and I know that this isn't always possible depending on your work, but shade this from direct sunlight. So if you've got a tent, if you've got an umbrella, it seems like earlier Tom was saying that, I mean, if you're not using it for a while, put it under a rag or a piece of cardboard or something like that, but do your best to shade this, and that's going to keep that temperature on the internal part of the device cooler and going to keep your device running possible. Also limit the amount of time that you have it exposure to extreme heat. If you have a lunch break where you can get into an air-conditioned car or into a building or something like that, maybe take the device inside and let it cool off a little bit. That will also help. It takes a little bit of time for it to get that internal temperature up. If it's a hot day, and if you can let it cool down a little bit, it just will extend the amount of time that you have to work with it in heat. What you will find, and I hadn't mentioned this previously, is that there is a limit that this device may shut down if it becomes too hot. It's typically quite hot, but that's when you've exceeded the 120 degree Fahrenheit on the internal temperature of the device. Talk about cold.
Yeah, so cold. So yeah, the operating temperatures, Brent mentioned before, you're at -4 Fahrenheit or -20 Celsius on the operating side. So jumping into maybe some of the best practices, your touch profile, your glove or your finger is probably going to be the best. And then as we'll talk here in just a second, the grounded stylus is also a great option for that. And I've got a slide on that here in just a minute, but and as Brent mentioned, excuse me, that fully charged battery is particularly important, especially in the cold. The cold, when the device goes into the cold, it tends to work a little bit harder to keep things running, to keep it warm, to do all that. So if you start out with a quarter of a battery and you go out into the cold, that could be depleted pretty quickly. So to start out with a full battery, it'll just give you the best experience. keep the battery or the device running longer. Good thing about Mesa is it does have amazing battery. You know, the battery life of the unit and how long it runs. I mean, you're really going to be fine in all conditions. So charge it up, even if it is going to burn a little bit more in these extreme cold temperatures. And then this kind of opposite of the heat, that direct sunlight is actually going to help. So if you do have a direct sunlight or, you know, something like that, make sure that it is in the sun, not in a shaded area. You know, let that sun work to your benefit on this time in the cold. Another kind of trick is to keep the device, if you can, next to your body or inside your coat. Your body kind of maintains, you know, you're at 97.8 degrees all the time pretty much. And so if you could keep that inside your coat, if you've got it on a shoulder strap or a harness or however you have that, if you can just drop it and put it inside your coat when you're not using it, that'll help keep that inside temperature up so that it continues to work properly rather than just being exposed in the cold all the time, you know, if that is an option. And again, you know, kind of like with the heat, if possible, limit your exposure to that extreme cold. So if you do go in, if you go inside and the device can come in with you, bring it in with you into a, you know, warm truck or inside the building, just to give it a time to recover and to get warmed back up. And then I want to talk a little bit about the grounded Stylus. Grounded Stylus, this is actually designed for cold temperatures. What we were finding, we had a customer that was using this, and I mean, they were extreme cold. I went up there and thought I was going to die. It was really cold, and so they're wearing thick leather gloves with insulation, you know, insulated thick leather gloves, and the screen wasn't being very responsive in those, you know, they're down in that extreme cold area. And so they were taking their gloves off, using their fingers, but their fingers were getting so cold that they wouldn't respond very well. And so what we designed and what we found out is that if we plug this Stylus in, if we ground the Stylus to the Mesa, it creates a circuit. So it's not pulling power, it's not giving power, but it does plug into the power port. So you plug this in, and then it creates this loop or this circuit within the Mesa. So when you use that grounded Stylus, you can have a leather glove on, you can have whatever, and it will respond very well. And so when you are in these extreme cold temperatures, if you are having some issues like that, or if you don't want to take your glove off, talk to us about this grounded Stylus. This thing is it's a lifesaver. It works really well and designed and thought out. And again, like I said, it's not pulling power, pulling anything like that. It's just a device, and it works in all locations. It's even hazardous location approved as well. And it does come with a modified port cover, so you can keep the other two ports closed up when not in use.
Let's talk about wet environments. This comes up a lot. We have people that work in snow and rain and underground where it always seems to be wet. And we realize that this is an important part of the work, and it's something that we've worked hard to make sure that we've taken care of. First of all, the device is an IP68 rating, and we'll dive into the Ingress Protection a little bit more here in a minute, but know that it's a waterproof device. Now, when we're in wet conditions, we find that there are a couple of things that we recommend. First of all, on the touch profile, there was a wet conditions there. What that does is that is engineered in a way that it's going to try to ignore as much of the water droplets as possible, and it's looking specifically for the finger or the soft tip stylus. So you're going to get your best results there. If water is pooling onto the screen, it's going to be to your advantage to shake off any excess that you can, and then also keep the tablet tilted at an angle. And that's a pretty good angle, just will help that the water run off of the screen. So those are two things that we would recommend doing. Somebody preempted this meeting with a question about this, and I'll just kind of dive in, but they were talking about wiping off the screen or blowing on the screen. And we have found that in some conditions, not always, this might trigger something on the screen. So if you can shake off the water, it's probably going to be best to do it that way. If you can be in a safe part of the screen where you're not going to proceed onto another, open up something else, or put in the wrong data, go ahead and wipe it down with a soft cloth or blow it off. But I would recommend trying to shake it off first. It would be the best bet for those conditions. It's just a quick video of how this works, but you can see that the screen is quite wet. He's got the soft tip stylus, which is working great. It's sensitive. It's going to be able to do your work. This is still not an ideal condition, but we've done a lot of good work to make it in wet conditions work even better.
Yeah, and I was going to say one other thing, like when you tip the device or you have it on a little bit of an angle, kind of like he's holding here. Once the droplets become big enough to start causing issues, they end up joining and they end up rolling off. So the problem that we've seen is when people leave it flat on a desk or not a desk or on a table outside or on a workbench or something like that, and the water's pooling, then when you get bigger droplets of pooling on the screen, then it starts to be a little weird on the responsiveness. So if you keep it at an angle, or even like Brent said, if you tip it straight up and then just give it a little shake, all those water, the bigger water droplets will drop right off, and the little ones don't cause any issues at all, really.
Let's talk about the Ingress Protection.
Yeah, so we talk about like IP68 ratings. You hear that quite a bit. Hey, it's IP65, IP67, or 8. You hear that, but what is that really? So this is kind of a little chart that we have here that, the IP is Ingress Protection. The first number is going to be your dust ingress, and then also the second number is going to be your water. And so with our devices, they're IP68, and on the example it says 65. Our devices are 68. 6 is going to be dust tight, no ingress of dust. There's like 0 dust particles that can get inside the device. And then on the water side, we're at 8. So we're at the highest level. So it's protection against the effects of immersion in water under pressure for a long period of time. And that's typically 1 meter of water, under 1 meter of water for over 30 minutes. And so the device is, it's built to keep things out, keep water out, keep dust out. And one thing that we do here at Juniper is we want to ensure that every device leaving our facility meets that standard. And every device, as they go down our build line, at the very end, they'll go through a vacuum check where we do pull a vacuum on the device and we ensure that it's going to meet that IP68 rating so that we're confident every device that goes out, they can be thrown in the water, they can be in dusty environments, and they can hold up to that. We want to make sure that they're going to meet your standards. And then into dust, as I mentioned, you have IP68, the 6 is on the dust, and that's the highest rating on dust. So with dust, on the finger stylus is going to be probably your go-to on that one. That's the default setting for touchscreen or touch profiles. Gloves, if you're wearing gloves, you just switch that over to the glove setting if you are wearing gloves in these kind of environments. And that would be your next best option with that. Something to keep in mind, I think people kind of forget this with electronics. Usually you're trying to keep them away from water, keep them away from things like that. This device is waterproof, so you get dusty, dirty, this thing's kind of just looking pretty rough, rinse it underwater. Take the tap, rinse it off, go to the river, rinse it out in the river a little bit, get it cleaned up. If it is, get a little grime and stuff on there, you can use a little bit of soapy water, use some Dawn or something like that, and just kind of wash it out, get it cleaned up. And but yeah, it is a waterproof device as well, so you can do that. And then something to always remember is that port cover, as you can see in that top right corner. So you've got your ports there. This is the Android unit, so it's got a USB-C, USB in the middle, and then a power jack. Those are actually sealed internally, so it doesn't have to have the cover for the IP68 rating, so you can get water and dust and dirt and it won't leak. But the problem is you don't have the port cover on, you drop it into mud, and now your jacks there are all full of mud or dirt or grime of some sort. So it is best practice to keep that port cover on there. So when you're not using those ports, make sure that's on there. So when you do drop it or in these environments, it does help protect the longevity of those, the USB and the power and USB-C. So yeah, always keep that port cover. And if you do lose it, they can come out. So if you lose it, give us a call. We do have those for sale. They're on our website, or you just give us a call. We can get you taken care of that way. But it is a good thing to have on there. And then also one other thing to keep in mind, if you are doing a hot swap on the device, hot swapping the battery, make sure that if there's a bunch of dirt or tons of water sitting around it, shake it off, dust it off, blow it off, clean it up just a little bit before you open that door. You just don't want to have a bunch of dirt or water dumping into the device when you open that battery door. So other than that, it's you're pretty well set. So
we visited a customer a couple of years ago that was working in some agricultural, what was that?
Oh, the cornmeal, the
Cornmeal, something,
Yeah,
but
yellow
such a
powder. Yeah.
fine yellow powder that was everywhere in the environment. And they, worked with these devices and didn't have any problem at all. But it's, again, just using some of those best practices to keep them clean and moving along. The last thing pardon me, not the second to the last thing we're talking about, drop in vibrations. So the Mesa 3 passes the MIL standard at 810G, and there's a bunch of different processes. There are a bunch of different tests that we were able to do to get that standard and to pass that qualification. But one of the key things about this is that it is designed to handle drops from 4 feet onto concrete. This is something that we test when we're engineering, when we're designing, and when we build these. We don't test every device on this, I promise. But we know that you guys might test that. And so we don't want you to test it, but we know that it happens. Probably the best practice on this is, well, don't drop it. That's an option. But to help you with that, we have a hand strap that comes with every device. But there are different carrying straps that you can just keep it kind of tethered to you so that if you lose your grip on it, that it's not going to hit the dirt or going to hit the concrete or drop. And then we also recommend, there's other mounts that we recommend for either vehicle or for survey pole, or a couple of different ways that we have device holders or mounts that we recommend you using rather than duct taping it to something. Our marketing team, looks like last winter, put together this little, here we are testing the drop and the shock and the waterproof and cold and everything in all in one day. So, but you notice that device is still running. I can see the glare there, but kind of fun to play around with this. Also, we wanted to show you how the hand strap works. There's a specific way that we've designed this hand strap to keep it so it's more ergonomic and easier to hold. But you notice that the hand comes in from the screen side and put the finger on the little ridge that's on the battery cover. This way, if you try this and you get used to this, it's amazing how long you can hold this device without fatiguing your hand. If you think about like how typically if you grab a tablet-sized device, you'll hold on to either edge of it and then you have to kind of twist your wrist around so that you can see the screen better. And what we found is that you'll get fatigued with that. And with this way, it takes very little energy for you to keep your fingers in place and moving on this. Lastly, we're going to talk about hazardous locations. Now, not all of our devices have this. This is an option, and you'll have to make sure that when you get your devices that you talk with your salesman about getting this. But on the back of the device, there will be this label, and it spells out what all of these hazardous locations designations are. Our devices are rated Class 1 Div 2, and that is non-incendiary designation, which means that Division 2, if you look on that side on the upper right, Division 2 is ignitable concentrations of flammable gases are not likely to exist under normal operating conditions, okay? So if you know that there's going to be, flammable gases in your environment, it's probably not the device, and you'll have designations in your workplace if you need this rating at all. But the Division 2 is in most scenarios, and if you look at this online, this is really you're working near oil and gas, you're working near chemicals or other dusts that may ignite, and this will keep that into into being, what would you call it, following the rules. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is right there, but know that this is on there on specific devices when you order them from us. So it's a non-incentive Class 1, 2, 3, and it covers a bunch of the different dusts as well. Couple of things to keep in mind with this is only use the certified Class 1 Div 2 device in the hazardous locations. Do not get a non-hazardous device in hazardous locations if you need that. You cannot hot swap the battery or open up the battery door. You cannot connect the USB or the power cable. There's too much of a chance of an arc happening there, and that would suddenly make it not possible to ignite something. So know that you can do all the computing, you can push the buttons, you can touch the touch screen, you can do a lot of work, but if you need to charge it or change out the battery, you need to get out of the hazardous location to do that. But thank you for joining us today. And like Tom said, let us know if you have questions. You know where to find us. We'd be happy to help you out with any of your needs. And if you find yourself something that's outside of the scope of this, like Tom said, we'd love to set up a meeting and talk with engineers and anything we need to do what we can to help you guys, because we really are all about rugged computers here, and we want to make sure that you guys are able to do your work with our devices.
Thank you.